All right, all right, all right. Thanks everybody for joining us for yet another episode of Dentment. I believe this is episode number 7. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's we've already done. Oh man, 6 sessions, 6 episodes. But welcome, thank you everyone. And today we have with us, of course,
A lot more than that.
we've got with us, of course, Dr. Milad and my colleague and friend Masood and myself and our special guest, Mr. Stephen Craig. Stephen, thank you for joining us. Appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. You guys have been doing some great work. I've watched every episode and enjoying them.
Beautiful. Fantastic to have you on board. So we'll start off with Stephen. If you want to give us a quick little kind of brief about who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do. And then we'll jump into questions. Dr. Milad and Masood always have so many questions. I kind of ask one, maybe two, but I kind of sit on the sidelines and kind of listen and I take notes. So go ahead, Mr. Craig, go for it.
Sure. No, I appreciate the time and I appreciate you guys having me on the call. So I've been in kind of sales leadership for probably about 30 years now. Coming out of school, actually, where Dr. Milad started his dental career in Davenport, where I went to school, and my dad was in sales. And I remember him telling me when I was really young that, when you go to like really nice neighborhoods and you look around, everyone always thinks it's a doctor, lawyer, whatnot. But he said, a lot of the people that live in those homes are salespeople. So it is actually a great career and something to get into. And that's kind of where I focused. And, I wanted to get into a kind of pharmaceutical medical. And when I graduated, I found out very quickly back then, they don't hire people out of school to get into pharmaceutical medical. So they told me life insurance, payroll services, office equipment. So that's what I chose. I chose office equipment, sold that for a while. I don't know if it was good or bad, but I was actually pretty good at it. Stayed probably longer than I wanted. Was there for about 4 or 5 years and then transitioned into pharmaceutical sales where I was in ophthalmology for probably about 8 years. And then the wonderful world of dentistry opened up to me. A friend of a friend said, hey, I know somebody, an organization that, just got purchased by Johnson & Johnson. I think it'd be a great opportunity. Ophthalmology and dentistry are very similar. Interviewed, went and did it, and really liked it. So I ended up joining a company, a division of J&J in their dental division, and was in primarily like the hygiene market for almost 20 years, working a little bit of everything there from rep to national accounts to senior leadership. And then eventually, our old CEO at J&J, had reached out to myself, another peer, and we're looking to merge 4 companies together. And they were looking for some help in the DSO space where I'd already had a lot of experience in. So he had purchased, 4 organizations, kind of merged those together, which is 4 companies called Solmedics, Stericyl, Dry Shield, and Implant. And we merged those together. So it's really fun. I'm kind of building out an organization and really trying to enhance things. When I was in my hygiene career side of things, it was products that in the perio space that made offices money, but really helped patients. The really cool thing about what we do now is it's things that really help patients, help clinicians, and help the environment. So it's a little bit of a different thing. So kind of that why is I love building high performing teams and then making them cohesive so they can really work together at that high performing speed. So this gives me that opportunity to get back in that building space and do it all over again. So that's kind of what I'm doing now. So it's fun. Like building is fun. It's kind of where you guys are on the AI side and Dr. Milad's at in building as well. So that's
Excellent.
where it's fun.
I know.
Absolutely,
I know
man.
Masood.
Like building.
Sorry, I was going to say, I know Masood's got a ton of questions, and he always has a ton of questions, and Dr. Milad's got questions. But before we jump in, yeah, absolutely. Before we jump into those, I wanted to kind of ask on a general, kind of on a 10,000 feet, what are 2 things that you would want to share on this particular podcast that would be very much of interest to our listeners, to those 2 specific things? Go for it. And then Masood, jump in. But
are you talking just in general about, what I do, or are you talking like leadership? Where you kind of, what do you have interest in?
I would go one into topics of leadership, mentorship, and you mentioned team building. That's really important. And the other piece would be maybe about lifelong leadership and kind of dental, as a dental learner, if you would.
Yeah, I think most things start with culture and mindset. So when I'm out interviewing reps, I take a little different approach. My thing is to talk them out of the position because selling in dentistry is not easy. You got to really want to do it, and what you're trying to find out is what is their why. What is their makeup? What do they want to do? Are they kind of more into to we versus me? And that's kind of how you build those high performing teams. So I find the people that, I'm more concerned about, what they're made up of, what's in their gut, what's in their mind. Do they want to be a lifelong learner? Do they want to handle, grit? What's truly that makes that person tick? And that's how you can really try to really build those high performing cohesive teams, because sales is not easy. It's very rewarding. It's very fun. But you're really trying to find those people that want to be more of a team player and really want, because any team's is strong as their weakest link. And I'm a true believer of you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And probably really where it ends up is you probably all fall down to the common denominator of the lowest player on the team. And so if you hang out with high performing people, you're going to do extremely well. You hang out with low performing people, you're probably not going to do that well. So you're trying to find people that are going to fit in and they believe in that kind of that we concept, and they're growth minded and they want to continuously learning, because at the end of the day, we're all like trees. We're either growing or dying. So if you continuously learn and realize that you're never going to reach perfection, but if you kind of strive towards that side of it, you're going to do pretty well. So for me, it's a lot about finding the right people to build those teams, and really finding the people that want to partner and work together. That would probably be, on that kind of leadership side of the high performing cohesive teams.
So Steve, the one thing that I think I talked to this gentleman, before. So I was actually in sales before I went to dental school. I did telecommunication for Cox, Virginia. I worked for Verizon Fios, did all that sales.
That's not easy.
It's not easy. It's not, because you have to convince people to switch their home services. But the one thing that always I'm so fascinated about sales. So as you're building that team, and you're bringing the people on to come and build the team, help you grow, like what are some of the characters that you look for as when you're hiring people to do sales? Because I believe that when you're doing sales, it truly takes a special character. I don't think anybody can do sales. You have to have very special character. What are some of the characteristics that you look for when you're looking to build that team to do the sales and to be successful at?
Well, like I said, I think a lot of it is you're really looking for that person that has that growth mindset. They want to learn, they want to improve, obviously a hard worker. But that's really hard to pick out in the interview process. So like I said, a lot of it is, in my interviewing style has always been try to talk them out of the position. But then a lot of it's really trying to figure out what makes them tick. Are they going to get up every day? Are they going to get out there and do the work? And then I think a lot of it is, at the end of the day, you're not really selling anything. At the end of everything is sales. In dentistry, sales is a word that clinicians don't like to talk about, but unfortunately, we sell every day, all day long. The clinician has to sell themselves of why they're going to get up in the morning and go out and go to the office. They also have to sell their staff of why they're going to show up, so they don't have that missing assistant or whatever. But then, you also got to sell the patients on why they need to come in, why dentistry is important. And then we haven't even talked about selling treatment to anybody yet. And you've done a lot of selling before you've even seen that first patient, just to make sure you have a high performing office. But a lot of it comes down to, building the right culture, finding the right individuals that want to thrive to be better, and they want to take that vision and mission and make it their own. But I think, really what it comes down to, it's the individuals that can really solve problems versus try to sell products. Because at the end of the day, nobody really wants to buy anything, but everyone has problems. And if you can really figure out what those problems and how we can help them, whether it's whether you're selling products, whether you're selling services, it really doesn't matter. Whether you're selling dentistry, everybody has a need. Can you find that, and can you find a way to partner with that person? So for me, the way I've always explained to my teams is we don't really want to be a vendor. We want to be a partner. So how do you figure out to be a partner with those individuals? So a lot of it is selling things. And, I take a lot of calls with other salespeople inside the industry, because a customer is always going to remember me more from not selling them a product. But if I actually can offer them a solution that has nothing to do with me, I'm not going to see any benefit from that. But they will always remember that more than anything I've ever done for them, that something that I took credit for, I got, a sale out of. So it's always trying to find ways to grow yourself, be able to partner with them and find solutions.
Well, Steve, that's great. I have so many questions. I don't know where to start. I'm kind of lost because
I told you.
Yeah,
Let's go. I've seen the podcast. I know he's got a lot.
Yeah, the thing is that it's coming from me because I'm just getting started into this. I was a tech guy. I love technology, and Mila think I should come closer to the mic. I love technology. I was all about building, and it got to a point that I built something great that was working and that was providing real value. But then it came to the point that I had to build a business around it. So I used to think that if I have a good software, if I have a solid software that's providing value, it's going to be amazing. Everyone's going to buy it. But then it came to the business point, and I was like, what the shit? Like, I have to do a whole lot of things for people to just find out about this, for me to be able to build a business around this, you know? So going step by step at it, you've been 20 years in sales, right? What's the first step?
A little bit longer.
A little bit longer.
But
okay.
Yeah, I've been a little over 20 years in dentistry, been selling way before that.
So you're just advising a guy that's only been in it maybe like 6 months to a year maximum.
We all started somewhere, and at the end of the day, we're all beginners. Every day starts.
Yeah, I got 20 something years before I get to where you are. So how do you go about sales? Because there are several steps to it, like especially when you're starting out with a company and then you want to find leads, you want to qualify the leads, you want to talk to them. How do you approach those leads? How do you gather them, especially in the dental space? How do you approach to them so that they don't see you as a sales guy? Because as soon as they find out you're a sales guy, like they find it pretty offensive. Nobody wants to talk to you anymore. How do you do that? I think that's the first step. Correct me if wrong.
No. I mean, like I said, that's where I think, for me, it's always trying to find the right people that really want to help people. They're not really into selling. At the end of the day, price is what you pay, value is what you get. So you can have great products, and sometimes products are really easy to sell and they sell themselves. Most stuff in dentistry does not. So I think a lot of it is really trying to figure out, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you selling? How can that help the industry? How can that help your customers? And I think a lot of it's, building rapport in that with them. Like I said, there's ways to help them, get to know them, learn the business. But I think a lot of it is, I consume a lot of content, and people always ask me, why do you do that? And it's because you want to learn the whole industry as a whole. It's great that your little segment, your little piece, your product, but dentistry is a pretty big business. The more you can have conversations, like I said, around things that have nothing to do with what you do, the more they start to look at you as a partner versus a vendor, and you have to be willing to let them know at times, the product I have may not be the best product for you. There's probably something that's better. A lot of salespeople don't want to do that, but they're going to find out eventually anyway. And then they're going to find out there is something better out there. So a lot of it's believing in what you have, really trying to build the value around it and see who you can partner with. But I also think, people used to always say, it's who you know, but I think nowadays it's who knows you. So I also think the more you can get out there and brand yourself and become more part of the industry, then people start coming to you for solutions, whether it has something to do with your product or not. Again, you can really help those individuals out. So a lot of it's really learning what you do, why you do it, and how that can really help somebody. And then it's not you're trying to sell them something. I mean, nobody likes sales. I mean, the thing that comes up all the time is buying a car. For most people, it's a really bad experience. Personally, I love it. It's like, let's go find the manager and let's get to work. So everybody's different, but you also have to learn, what makes people tick, the customers you're working with. You can't give the sales approach to every single person. You got to figure out, what's their makeup, whether it's their disc style. There's all different ways you can go about that. But everyone retains information differently. Everyone accepts information differently. Everyone wants to communicate differently. So a lot of it's just really just being a human versus just trying to sell somebody something and make the run. Because no one really appreciates that.
I mean, the whole idea about selling is that as soon as you tell someone I want to sell you this, they start thinking that you want to trick them into buying that, not that you are genuine and you are honest. So I think that's the first value that you have to sell them, that you are an honest man. Like, you just want to find out what their need is and find out if what you have is a good fit for the problem that they are facing. Am I right about that? Or
it can be. I mean, that really tells you that person had a bad experience with something that they purchased, and probably possibly more than once. So a lot of it's, maybe it's finding out what that experience was like. Why was that? But I think a lot of times, people don't ask the questions. You decide you want to get anything, a swimming pool, and the three companies, most of them are just going to tell you what you need in the pool. The person who's probably going to win the business is the person that sits down. Why did you call me? Why did you even think about going to a swimming pool? What's your vision with that? What do you guys want to do with that pool? Is it, to celebrate with your grandkids? Is it your kids? Is it life memories? What is the reason why? And then I think you can also come up with a better plan because, if you're buying something like a swimming pool or like in your case, software, there's all different types of packages we can put together. But the same package doesn't fit for everybody. So what does this individual need? And like, once again, how do you not oversell them? How do you really figure out what they want, what they need, and what's going to help them be successful, what they're trying to accomplish? And unfortunately, most salespeople aren't doing that. Good for them. They believe in their product. But like I said, their product may not be the best thing for every single person. And not everybody should be your customer at the end of the day.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And basically, suppose you just got to leave. And then, as we just talked about it, like the first thing you have to prove to them is that you are genuine and that you're not just trying to sell to them. How do you combat that? Because right now, this selling thing is so saturated. Like people get sold many times. We were talking to Brad Hughes, and how many emails, Mila, did he say he gets every day, like for just sales from companies? I think
he said he had like 137,000 emails that he hasn't even opened.
Yeah. So it's got to a point that even if you are very curious, even if you are the kind of guy that wants to ask those questions to basically find out even if that person has those kind of problems that you have a solution for, you still come out as a sales guy. Like they don't want to talk to you, even if you start asking questions. How do you approach that? Like, what's a good solution to approaching in a better way?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of different angles. I mean, there really is no one solution to anything. I think there's probably 130,000 sub sellers that have obviously sent an email to Brad, whether that's right, whether that's wrong. The people that are probably going to win with him are the people that engage with him, find out what is his true passion. He always talks about his why he does things, getting his team to look at the why. So I think a lot of it would be, engaging with him and trying to figure out, how can you help him? How can you assist him versus just sending an email and thinking that someone's going to click on it and buy. I mean, that works for Amazon. Doesn't work for too many things outside of that. And most of the time, those people are going to Amazon to purchase something. Those are the easy wins. And a lot of times people don't realize there might be a better solution out there. I'm not really convinced that humans fear change. I just think they fear sudden change. So sometimes, if you can get out there and find out where the type of customers that could benefit from, say, your AI platform, and you're having conversations with them, you're engaging with them, you're on social media with them, you're going to make your life a lot easier versus trying to send out 130,000 emails with all your different bots today, trying to hopefully 10 of those people are going to call up and say, yeah, we need that service. I think you got to be a little more selective of who you go after.
And how do you find those people? Like, where do you go specifically in the dental space?
Like I said, it should be your universe. I mean, you could easily on, LinkedIn, different types of social medias, there's ways to look up, who the big players are. There's different services you can hire. There's a lot of different things. So I think a lot of it's, there's a lot of different meetings you can go to. So there's a lot of ways where you can end up in the same room as the people you're trying to target. But I think, where things get separated is, are you genuine about it? Are you just in those rooms because you want to sell something, or are you really there because you want to learn? That's where a lot of people, I go to a lot of dental conventions. That's what people always say. You're in the room trying to learn and educate yourself. Why is that? It's like, because I'm trying to get better and I'm trying to grow and I'm trying to learn. I've been in dentistry for 20 years, but I still think it's ever changing. And what we knew last year is dramatically different from what we know this year. And you guys in the AI space, you already know that. What happened yesterday in AI is probably totally different than what's happening today. Everything's moving at a lot greater speed that you have to continuously learn and try to figure those things out.
Yeah, but it's so amazing that you mentioned that, we had podcasts with Sarah, with everybody else. Why do you think personal branding has become such an important thing in any industry, but in particular, I feel like in the dental field, the personal branding has become such a big deal. Like, why do you think that is? Like, when did that shift happen? I mean, like you mentioned, you've been in the field of selling for a long time. When did you realize that shift is happening? That a lot of people are putting a lot of focus on their personal branding, using LinkedIn, using different platforms. And how effective is that? Is that an effective strategy? Does it work? What has been your experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're seeing it work all across the dental industry, but it comes down to being genuine, being authentic. You're going to figure out pretty fast if someone's really the person you meet online. Like they always say, sometimes you don't want to meet your heroes because they may not be the people you think they are. And so, you can kind of tell pretty fast, like a Brad Hughes, you can tell he's a great guy, let alone what he's done with the industry and the profession. You can tell that. Heartland Dental has, one of their big recruiting things is we hire nice people. You want nice people working for you. You want nice people to deal with. And that's, one of the things I've always thought about is, if you're going to hire somebody, could you sit in a car ride with them for an hour, 2 hours? If you can't, then they may not be the right people. And just because, Brad's video today was around, are they willing to learn? Are they willing to grow? And, my comment back to him was, if you look at Michael Jordan, he, in his first stint before Phil Jackson, it was all about him. Phil Jackson came in and really changed the way he looked at basketball, looked at himself, and looked at everything. He became a lot more of a team player and realized what he could do and how the team could pull together to win. And you saw the success he had. He walked away with six championships. So I think a lot of it is getting in the right rooms, but a lot of it comes down to doing it for the right reason. And unfortunately, as you talked about in the very beginning, a lot of people are in sales for the wrong reason. There's a lot of people that don't really want to be in it. They don't really enjoy it. But I think when it comes down to personal branding, I think it's where you can show your true authentic self, and really show what you're made of, how you think, what your aspirations are. And I think it's also changing. I mean, I think a lot of organizations before really didn't want people to have a personal brand, especially on the sales side, because they wanted the company or the product to be the face. They didn't want the seller to be the face of the fear of that person might go. Well, if that person's going to leave and go somewhere else, they're going to leave and go somewhere else, regardless of whether you do that or not. But what they miss is, and I think a lot of people now realize it, and Sarah, that's what she does. She teaches people how to build a personal brand. And one, it's going to make you stronger, but two, it lets people know who you are. And you're not just whatever, the doctor that works at this office or the seller that works for this company. And people get to know you a little bit better in the way you think and what makes you tick and kind of what is your why.
Steve, I have a question just about that.
Yeah, that's absolutely great.
You mentioned a lot about people that you surround yourself with. What characteristics do you think makes a good personality for someone that's in sales? Like, what should I have? And I know that it's not something that you inherit, but something that you have to learn, right? So
I think a lot of it is figuring out what is your makeup, because when you watch other people sell or you watch other people play basketball or, you watch another person do an implant dentistry, what you really want to think is, what is the end result they're trying to get to? And how do I do that in my own way? Because if I try to be Dr. Milan and go in and do an implant this way, that may not be how I'm comfortable, the way I don't like to talk. There's a lot of different things. You have to figure out what makes you comfortable and how do I get the same end result, but at my own style. And that's how you become authentic and genuine when you do it your way versus trying to copy somebody. And in sales, I've been in sales leadership for a long time. That's what I always saw people do. They would go to the national sales meeting and find the number one seller and say, how do I be you? And it's like, well, you're probably never going to be them. There's something about them that's different. You have to find out how in your own style you can do that. And it's not just the people who are charismatic or whatnot that are successful. There's all different walks that I've seen, in my past life. And like I said, I was there for about 20 years. I mean, we did extremely well. I had 6 rookies of the year, 6 number ones. But what made the difference was I was always like, who did you hire in that? It's because I really believed in those individuals and I wanted to see them succeed. It wasn't about me. It was about them. And anytime we finished number one as a team, the team went up first because it's not about me. It's about the team. The team's what got us there and what got us successful. And I think, as a leader, you have to take the bullets when things go wrong and you got to give the praise away when things go well. Because at the end of the day, it's the team that's doing it anyway. You're just kind of molding them together, bringing out the best in those individuals. So I don't really think there's one way to go about it, but the thing I always coach and tell people and work to develop them is figure out how you want to portray yourself and how can we make you the best version of yourself versus trying to emulate somebody else, because people are going to see through it pretty fast.
And Steve, about the team, you've been managing a lot of sales teams, and a big part of that is that basically early morning speech that you give to them. But with that, I'm trying to get to the point, how do you motivate them? Like, suppose you have a team of, 5, 4, however many people. How do you motivate them to basically do the job in a way that they should?
Yeah, like I said, when I'm in kind of the interview process, that's where I say you're really looking for what makes those individuals tick. Because at the end of the day, you really can't motivate anybody. What you're really trying to find is self-motivated people that motivate themselves, and you can help enhance that. Because motivation is going to fade. A lot of it comes down to discipline. Do they have the discipline to do what they need to do? Everybody knows what they're supposed to do every day. but it's very easy to hop on some social media platform and get lost for a while or whatnot, or, go to instead of a 20-minute lunch, go to a 2-hour lunch. So you're really trying to find the individuals that are self-motivated. And like I said, you're trying to bring out the best in them. It really comes down to the individuals you surround yourself with, because I can tell you, high-performing people don't like to hang around mediocre performers and vice versa. So you're really trying to build a team of high performers, but you also, like I said, you're looking for those we versus me people. There's a lot of high performers that it's all about them. And, that is not going to build a cohesive, high performing team. You might have one great player, and like going back to that same example, you saw that with Michael Jordan. He scored a lot of points in those early years, still scored and still did well in the later years, but there was more of a team approach. And that's where they really saw success. And, you've seen it all over sports of taking 5 superstars from the same team. Sometimes that works. Majority of times it doesn't, because you see people fighting for the ball and the points and the accolades and the praise. It really comes down to hiring is the most important thing you're ever going to do. And it truly is about finding the right people for the right reason.
That makes so much sense.
Just going back to that, I think that's something as a person, I would struggle with sometimes. And that could be just because I'm going through, I'm kind of like learning how to be that leader that I need to be in a dental practice, I think the one thing that I struggle with sometimes, and that's, I'm not ashamed to say it, but it's just sometimes I have a hard time of getting my team to see the vision that I have for what I'm trying to accomplish. So how am I going, how can I, if you have to like give me advice, like how can you get your team to see the vision and what you're trying to accomplish? Because, sometimes you can't push, like you said, you can't push somebody to do something if they don't want to, right? But you also want to tell them, hey, this is the vision of what I'm trying to accomplish, and let them like share that vision with you. So how can you like do that without coming out as like pushy or like being aggressive or saying something that somebody would take it personal? How can you do that in a way that like somebody can see your vision the way you're seeing it?
I think a lot of it's how you lay it out. Sometimes we think they understand what we're saying. They may not, but it's also bring them along to be a part of it. They might have an idea, the leader shouldn't have all the ideas. And I think most of the time, most leaders should speak last, because you're going to come up with a lot of great ideas. There might be tweaks you can make to that vision and mission and that plan. And unfortunately, a lot of visions and missions on walls, most people can't even tell you what they are, what they're there. Some company made it up for them, and no one. So you really have to bring it alive, and you have to live it. You have to believe in it. And then, like I said, then it goes back to the hiring process of finding people that want to live it, believe it, and do that. And a lot of times companies aren't as honest, leaders aren't as honest of laying out, this is the expectations, this is what we're looking for, this is our mission, this is our vision, this is what we're trying to accomplish. And you want to find the people that want to come along and do that. There's a lot of people that are great in the interview process. They're not really great in the execution process of doing what they need to do to help you bring along that vision and mission. And unfortunately, there are some times where, there are people that might need to seek excellence elsewhere because they might be that person that's holding back the team or having conversations behind the leader's back of, this isn't really, and goes back to the people you surround yourself with, because you can always see it. All the high performers are in one corner and all the mediocre people in the other corner complaining.
Yeah, I think I also have a story to share with Milad. I think what he's referring to is basically, especially companies that will start out and they are very early stage and you basically don't have employees, but everyone is a founder. Have you had that kind of experience, Steve, like within a team?
Yeah, in our early days when we started out, it was a startup organization. I was coming on board right when J&J was buying it. A lot of the founders were still there and the individuals. But, I've seen those type of situations where they're very successful and they do well. I've seen other ones where, what got you there may not get you where you want to go. And so sometimes, whether it be salespeople, whether it be leaders, whether it be clinicians, whether you're building, whether it's your operations team, whatnot, some people are great at getting the startup going. Some people are great at growing that organization. And I think once you start seeing organizations double and triple, some leaders may not have the capacity to get to the next level. Because, if you go from 5 million to 10 million, well, it's a lot different going from 10 million to 20 million, then going from 20 million to 80 million. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you need a new skill set that is more comfortable in that arena. And at the end of the day, most people are happier with that. And like I said, I think a lot of it's just, being human to the whole process of, like I said, if someone needs to seek excellence elsewhere, it should never be a surprise to anybody in the room. We should have been having those conversations all the way along of, this is what we expected and this is what you said you were going to do. And whether it happened or it didn't, you want to have that coaching opportunity. But it comes back to, again, being human of, do you want to get better? Is this truly what you want? Let us help you. But unfortunately, I think, the Jack Walsh days are kind of over from GE, where, you just whack off a lot of the bottom players. That wasn't really a healthy mindset. And I think you're starting to even, the Harvard studies and all that kind of changing a little bit. I think it's more palatable and people can get behind that vision and mission better if the leader is a little more human, can share vulnerabilities, and really wants to partner with the team and really help develop those individuals. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Cameron Harold. He runs the COO network, but like he always says, at the end of the day, what we do is just, money to feed our families and all that, but we're all walking each other home. So why not play right, play fair, meet some people along and enjoy the journey. And, one of the things I've always lived by, it's, on the tombstone, it's not really about the number on the front and the end. It's about the dash in the middle. It's about the journey, who you interacted with, who you met, what type of stories, did you have fun? What was it all about? And I think, there's a lot of people that miss that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing, Mr. Steve. The one thing I wanted to also ask was, as far as, like you mentioned, some of the organization, you said that they had like a few founders, a few leaders, and they end up being super successful. So my question is that, like, what path did those organizations took for, they became successful? What path did they take? Because there are companies and organizations that I was a part of that had multiple founders. Everybody was on a different channel. Nobody was on the same page, and they failed. So what, as somebody that is, I'm about to start a company with Masood, with Allo AI, with Sarah, correct? So I want to know, now that I am in this position, like, what can I do to ensure that, we're going to be successful? We're going to make sure that we're all on the same page. Like, what is some of your advice to us on that?
Well, I mean, I already know a lot of those individuals like Greg and Sarah, and, and I've gotten to know you guys a little bit through the podcasts and all that. And, and it's weird. You go on podcasts like this and you think you already know the individuals because you guys have had a lot of episodes out there. So I think a lot of it's finding the right people with the right reasons, the right mission, the right vision, and really the right people. There's a lot of times where, you got to trust your gut, where people realize this probably isn't going to work. This probably isn't the right team, but they go for it anyway. Knowing that, well, it usually doesn't end very well. Those are the ones where, like you said, you have 6 superstars and they all think they're going to become the leader and the CEO, and they're all fighting for that. It's truly, do you understand your place? Do you understand what your job is? And how the team's going to get successful? So I don't really see any issues for you guys because you have people with the right mindset to begin with, which is half the battle. But there's a lot of times you enter situations like that where you think you do, and then you find out you don't. Good news is I know most of those individuals, so you're in a good spot. But I think it's a lot of times it's a power play. People want to be the one in charge, and every single great CEO that is successful has a great COO behind them that's kind of really doing a lot of the operations and the work. And a lot of times, they should be different. My wife and I, people wouldn't say we're exactly the same. But you also see that with COOs and CEOs. They should have some of the skill sets that others don't. And the really good, smart ones realize that, sometimes it might be the CEO that's like Steve Jobs up on the stage talking. Other times it might be the COO, because the CEO, that's not their style. You see that in the DSO space. There's individuals that are the main player, but that's not them. That's not how they thrive. That's not how they live. That's not what they do. And the smart ones realize that and find someone that has a skill set that they don't have to make themselves that way.
Yeah, that's super great sharing. Like, it's really tricky when you're starting out a new company because it's a completely new mission. It has so many milestones and things that you have to do that you have to all figure it out by yourself. New challenges, especially if it's a new idea, like something that has not been worked on before. So it's pretty tricky. So Steve, I was gonna, we asked a lot of questions. I wanna give you not a question, but a statement about my story. And then I'm just gonna ask for your feedback about what you think. Earlier today, we were on a sales call with me and Hossein with a DSO out of Texas. I think it went pretty well. I don't know what you think of saying, but I think it went pretty well. And the only reason that it went well was because we weren't even trying to sell. Like, we were just trying to show them what we have and how it's been working out for the other customers. And literally just asking them, does this work out for you guys? Like, do you think this is a good solution? Trying to push it or do anything. And what I usually do on these basically sales calls is that I start with my story of, like, I try to make it very genuine, exactly what I've been doing, how the whole thing started, and where we are right now. I start with my story that, like, you probably heard it if you saw the podcast, that like 2 years back, I was trying to book an appointment for my friend. Nobody picked up, called up 10 clinics. Then I started making this solution. At first, it was pretty shit. It wasn't working. We started working with a doctor, and that doctor hated it, but he was good enough that he stuck with us and helped us improve it and work on it and trained our AI models to make it better and better every day. And right now, this is where it is. It's not the perfect solution, but it's really working. And the ROI is pretty good. Like, it's helping out many offices, and like the receptionists, the patients are happy. So what's your feedback on this? Like, it's really not a question. I just want to know if this is a good thing that I tell the whole story to them. Like, because the thing that I found out, I've had many people that I reached out to on LinkedIn, and they pretty much ghosted me because they thought I'm trying to sell to them. And later on, when I started just sharing my story, not going to anyone like individually and telling them this is my solution, it turned out to be better. So yeah, what do you think of the whole thing? Like, am I approaching it right, or do I have to make any changes of how I'm presenting this? What's your take?
Well, I mean, like you said, I have heard your story. And, I think walking through that explanation of kind of why you do what you do, anyone that's ever tried to make a dental appointment has felt that. It's not an easy thing. We all know in the industry, the amount of phones that are actually answered is a lot less than, say, a doctor, the owner in the back thinks is actually being happened. Dr. Richard Maddow, who has his own podcast. I mean, pretty much just those phone calls all day. You listen to that, and you're kind of like, wow, I guess a lot of people don't answer the phone. And even if they do answer the phone, they're not trained very well, that they probably shouldn't be talking to anybody on the phone. So I think explaining the story of kind of why you do what you do, I think a lot of people understand that. And especially in the DSO space, they realize that, a lot of DSOs have call centers. If the phone's not answering the office on the second or third ring, it's going to a call center. And they're very good at what they do. But you don't see that on the other side of business. And it's not that DSOs have it all figured out. There's great DSOs out there, and there's pretty poorly run DSOs out there. But the knock on DSOs has always been retention. But the retention on the one solo practice owner is not much better. And there's great solo practice owners out there, and there's not so great solo practice owners out there. But I think everyone feels what you guys are trying to put together, because it's not always the greatest experience, especially as a new patient trying to do some of that, of just get an appointment or get an emergency or whatever it can be. So I think a lot of it, when you're telling that story, I would imagine people probably feel why you're doing what you do, why you created the company. And it's a need that most people have. It's either they recognize it or they don't recognize it. But I think, one of the things you talked on is, you said it's not perfect, but it's back to that whole perfection thing. You could sit around until it is perfect, and it may never be perfect. Things are always changing. So it's kind of working with what you have. How do you tweak it? How do you make things better? But I would imagine somebody coming on with your solution is going to be better off than what they're doing today. But it's finding the individuals that understand that and want to partner with you to make their practice better. Dentistry, it makes a lot of money. But it could do a lot better. It's just a matter of, like I said, there's a dental home for everybody. Kind of in that pre-show, it's where do you want to be, and it goes for everything. There's a dental home for patients. So they want to go to this practice, they don't. There's a dental home for clinicians. I want to work here, I don't. There's a dental home for staff that they want to work there, or they don't. But I think your guys' solution is onto something, and I think your story kind of opens up why you do what you do.
Yeah, I mean, usually the way I approach it to them is that I faced a problem myself and I didn't feel good because it wasn't a pleasant experience. So I thought about firstly solving it for myself, and then going about and solving that problem for many other patients just like myself. Milad earlier today, like, he sent me a comment from basically a Google review from one of the patients that he was like, I called you guys 3 times, left a voicemail, nobody got back to me. So that's basically what we're trying to do. And what I was trying to get at it is if they're on the right path, because it's kind of like my probably first time doing it. Hussein has done this with other companies, but it's his first founder experience. So you've been through many companies and you've seen people have failures and fail at this and that. So that's why I just wanted to tell you the whole story to see what we're going to fail at and try to avoid it beforehand.
Well, I think you have to be open to failure. Nobody's made it through without failing at anything. And anyone that says they have is a little mistaken. But, I think a lot of it's being open to failure. Probably some of the best products ever on the market weren't even intended for what they do. There was failure all along, but then they found a different solution or whatnot. You were talking about, one of your last hosts, Edgar, the NFL player, like he said, had a video today about bubble wrap. And it was invented to be, wallpaper or something. And now look what it does. That was a massive failure as wallpaper, but it really hit a home run with what it does now. And there's not anybody in the U.S. that doesn't know what that is or anywhere in the world. Everyone knows what bubble wrap is. So I think you have to be open to that if that's the path you want to walk. But I think a lot of it's, kind of letting go of that perfection thing. I think if you're probably 80% happy with what you got to run with it. You'll probably figure out the other 20, but that goes for anything. Life decisions, selling products, building companies. If you wait for perfection, you're going to be sitting on the sidelines for a long time.
Yeah.
Mr. Steve, you mentioned something that I feel like in every call that I get on, either at the office or the people I talk to on the podcast, why do you think the retention is such a big issue in the dental industry? Why is that? Because for me, I've been out for 2 years. I mean, doctors, staff, such a big issue, especially in the DSO market. I feel like the shortage, everybody's feeling it, right? And I mean, we were just having Dr. Mohammadi on not long ago. He said, man, I went from having 16 practice to 12 because I just couldn't, the doctors wouldn't stay. Or why is that? Why is the retention and the staffing such a big issue in this industry?
Well, I think it's all over the board. I think COVID plays a little bit into that, and people saw a different side of life. I think a lot of businesses aren't run that well. So I think there's businesses, pre-COVID that were run extremely well, and they didn't really skip a beat during COVID. And they're still performing well now. And then there's others where, it wasn't that well run, and now they're running into issues. But I think it's a little bit of everything of, someone like yourself, you go to dental school, it's not inexpensive, and everyone goes in it for a different reason. Like I said in the very beginning of, my dad driving me through that neighborhood and explaining that, these aren't all doctors and lawyers, but a lot of people want to become a doctor or a lawyer because of the money. Then a lot of times there's a lot of individuals that get into it and they're 1-2 years out and realize, I don't even like this, but I spent all this time and all this money. I'm kind of stuck doing what I'm doing. There are other ways to do that. I've hired a lot of hygienists through the years but they have to want to do something differently. It's not just consulting or sales that's your only option out. There's other things you can do. But for a lot of them, that is their vision. That is their mission. I know a lot of people that, went to nursing school, never ever intending to be a nurse. They wanted to get into, OR sales. And they figured that way they would understand a lot greater what they do. So a lot of it's, finding the right people to surround yourself with. And find, like I said, there's a dental home for everybody. I think a lot of it, some of it comes down to that of how much, if you're going to spend $500 to $1 million on schooling, well, you may not want to work for somebody. You probably want to be an owner. Did you go in it for the right reasons? On the sales side, same thing. Did you get into sales for the right reason? Did you get into it because you knew somebody who made a lot of money selling, or did you get in it because you truly want to help people? And same on the dentistry side. Some people really want to help people. Some people want to build a business. Other people just want to make money. And I know that was one of the questions earlier of, why sales is so hard, because there's all types of sellers out there.
Yeah, that's amazing. I can definitely tell you that every time we talk about the cost of dental school, I get depressed. It was not, it was a big bug.
Yeah, but it's dentistry is not easy either.
Yeah,
I'm not a clinician, but you're in a small little box with patients that may not want to be there. They kind of feel like they have to. Everyone looks at their oral health differently. And you're there really trying to help them. So everyone thinks that you're there for the money as well. So it's no different than kind of the questions before on the sales side. It's not an easy profession. And then unfortunately, I think you have to live under abundance versus scarcity. I think Howard Farran probably said it best on one of his podcasts when he really laid it out that, He had to get the best grades in high school to get in the right college, had to get the best grades in college to get into the right dental school, had to get the best grades in dental school to get into the right specialty and all that. So he was kind of taught from day one that everyone, to the front, to the right, to the left, behind is kind of his competition. So a lot of times you go out there. So, that's when I talk to clinicians, I think you want to work with the people that live under abundance. So if you ask a simple question of, what do you know about the guy across the street, down the hall, a mile down the road, if it's rural, if they tell you that, I don't really know that doctor very well. I've seen him wave to him once, or yeah, we get together every Friday night. We talk through cases, like we kind of buddy up on things. He sees my patients, when I'm on vacation, she sees my patients when I'm not around. They live under abundance and they realize that. And I think one of the things that I learned a long time ago was I listened to an interview it was the head real estate guy for Burger King. And I think he was in the process of retiring. And in my day, it was Burger King and McDonald's. Those were the kings. And they asked the guy for Burger King, how'd you compete against them all those years? And he goes, well, I guess I'm retiring, so I guess I can tell you the truth. And he kind of laughed. He goes, we did nothing. They're like, what do you mean you did nothing? He goes, I just told my team, sit back, wait for McDonald's to buy a location, and then swoop in and get as close as you can. And hopefully the opposite corner, they'll get them for lunch. We'll get them for dinner. We'll get them for breakfast. They'll get them for lunch. They're going to go both ways in the street. It's totally fine. But you think about it, there's a dental office on every corner. There's a Shell and Amoco on every corner. There's a Citibank. And now you get into the chicken wars, and there's a Cane's and a Chick-fil-A on each corner. They all realize that there's enough business out there for everybody. And I think when you really break down dentistry at the end of the day, what the numbers they've always claimed is, 40% of patients didn't go to see a dentist prior to COVID. Now 60% don't, and 50% of patients that have dental insurance don't use it. So if we could all, instead of trying to figure out like, how do I build the best DSO or how do I do this, really try to partner and work with each other. How do we get the other 60% of patients that don't go to the dentist? How do we all work to get them to go to the dentist? Realize that it's not just, the new wealth is health. How do they realize that if they have a great oral health, they're probably going to have a great overall health? There's so many systemic links there for that. How do we get them to get the other 60% to show? If we all went in this together, from the ADA to all the different societies, from the DSOs to the non-DSOs, and all worked on that, patients would be a lot healthier at the end of the day. We'd see a lot longer life longevity, and obviously the business would do better for everybody on all sides of it. But that's not always the focus of how do we all get together and how do we do this?
Mr. Steve, let's be the voice of the change. How do we do it?
Once again, you got to surround yourself with the right people and find, like I said, there are some individuals doing that now. You look at Steve Thorne at PDS has really taken on the oral systemic link. He wants that medical dental, connection. So you're seeing that out there. Aspen has really taken on the patients that a lot of other practices don't want to see, and they've made an incredible business out of it. You look at Heartland and they want to be, hygiene focused, doctor led, really let those doctors be the owners, let them, run the practice and do that. So like I said, there's a dental home for everybody. People have to find that home and patients have to find that home. But yeah, if we could all get together and work on that, life would be a lot easier, but it doesn't stop there. It's every industry has the same issues. We have the same issues in just about everything in life. But that's where it comes down to surrounding yourself with the right people so you can at least make yourself happy. Because unfortunately, you're not going to make everybody happy. But hanging around the people that want to sit by the water cooler and complain all day, that's not going to help your life. It's not going to help the world be a better place.
A quick question, Steve. You mentioned a lot going around the right people. With what we're doing with, me and Milad, we got into another business, Dentment, which basically connects all the mentors to dentists and graduates and stuff. Do you think I'm the right person for Milad, and Milad is the right person for me?
I think you need mentorship. Mentorship is a huge thing. And I think one of the things people miss is it's not just having, when you're the mentor, you're probably going to learn more than the mentee. And where a lot of people miss is reverse mentorship. There's a lot of people that aren't as tech savvy and they might be older. Well, having a reverse mentor is probably going to help you dramatically. AI is moving so fast that you may not know what's going on, but a reverse mentor might be able to help you with that. So just because, like you said before, you're never going to catch up to me in sales, where there's probably a lot I could learn from you on the AI front that I don't know, that and we could probably partner together on things like that. So I do believe, mentorship's it. And that's a lot of what I said, finding the right people with the right mindset and truly want to grow, because, unfortunately, a lot of people want to go out where it's going to pay you the most money when you get out of, say, dental school. But mentorship's probably more important. Most dental schools are teaching 5 to 7 years in the rear. You don't have the hand speed. You're probably not getting that many implant cases and specialty cases. That's going to the specialty side of the dental school. But, if you get in with the right person that's going to mentor, develop you, you're going to be a far superior clinician at a lot faster rate than trying to do it. And I think, so it's finding the people that want to share that and want to share that passion. Those are the people you want to surround yourself with. Not the person that wants to tell you how great their cases are, but they don't want to tell you about any of the failures, and then they don't want to share those. They're probably not going to help you much, because I think you're gonna learn way more from failure, to that other point you made, than you are from successes. It's easy to look great when everything's going good, but that's where you find true leadership when things aren't going well. That's when you find the real high performing individuals, when they can stick it out when things aren't going well. And we've all seen it, whether it's something in life, whether it's in sports, whether it's in anything. There's people that are really great winners and really poor losers.
Yeah.
And then there's also the vice versa. There's people that don't want to lose, but they can handle losing. And really, they're the ones that seek to find out, why did we lose? What did I learn from that? How am I going to grow? And how importantly, how am I going to make sure that doesn't happen next time? Whereas others are just, they want to blame, it wasn't their fault. It was somebody else's fault. It was some other thing that happened that caused that to happen, versus really just looking inside yourself to figure out, how do you make yourself better?
Totally. That makes...
Mr. Steve, I'm telling you right now, you need to start making videos and post them on LinkedIn, man. You're amazing.
Absolutely.
Something I was going to say,
100%.
Steve, what you just said, since I met Milad, I think every idea and every story and every company needs a great person at the very top. And since I met Milad, even though I never was a dental student, or I had never, my dad was a dentist, I never had anyone in dentistry, and it's only 2 years that I've been in this industry. He explained his story and the problem that he faced so good that I fell in love with it, as a person that had no idea. So I think you mentioned a lot about finding the right people and finding the right team. So that's, I think, is the most important factor for any kind of success, to find out the person that is going to be a winner, no matter how many failures they're going to have. And I think, Milad, this is a compliment to you. I think you're that kind of person. So yeah,
thank you.
I would second that. I mean, what you've done in a short period of time is pretty amazing. But I think you have the right mindset, and I think you're open to realizing, I don't know everything, but I want to get better. I'm going to reach out to people. You and I connected quite some time ago on LinkedIn, and I think that's the people you're looking for. I reach out to other people, whether it be clinicians, whether it be salespeople, whatever, knowing it's like when you talked about your sales call. Maybe 2 or 3 people are going to meet with you. The other 8 or 9 are going to blow you off. But you have the right audience. And you're really trying to find the people that want to grow, because the first they're going to think is, well, I can't get anything out of you, or what am I going to learn? We're not even in the same industry, or we don't even sell in the same category of dentistry. Well, that's not what life's about. Life's about trying to partner with other people. How do I help them become better? How do they help me become better? And it's a two-way street. But I think a lot of it comes down to mentorship and learning. There's something you're going to learn every time you go to a conference, every time you talk to somebody. How do you write that down? It's like I tell my kids all the time, if you really want to have a good time at a party, hang out with the 3-year-olds and the 83-year-olds. The 3-year-olds don't know any better. They're just going to tell you what's going on and all that. And the 83-year-olds, they're on the back nine, and they're probably approaching the 18th green. They're going to tell you about their regrets, what they wish they did differently, how they probably should have lived their life, things they would have done differently. And I think you learn a lot from that. But that's not where people want to be. They want to be up on top of the table, dancing with the lampshade on their head, having a good time. But different folks, different strokes, everything's different.
Steve, before we let you go, I want to ask you one last question. So we talked about the mentorship, and I think, I post this on my LinkedIn all the time, and we discussed this. Probably me and you talked about it as well on LinkedIn. We know the mentorship is such a big issue in our industry. I can vouch for that, because I graduated dental school, and I brought this up in the previous podcast, where I felt very isolated at the time, because, you leave the comfort of dental school, you step out to the real world, you don't really know what's going on, because they don't prepare you for that, right? They just tell you, here's how to do a crown prep, here's how to do a filling, take your exams, you pass, have a nice day, and figure your life out. So when you're coming out, and you want to find the right mentor to kind of help you along your journey, what are some of the characteristics that a young dentist need to look for when you're trying to pick the mentor to help you along your journey? Like I'm sure you probably had a mentor along your journey. Like, what were some of the characteristics that you look for when you tried to pick that mentor?
I've had quite a few. No one gets to where they are. There is no self-made man. Somebody helped them get to where they were. Somebody helped her get to where they were. People make that claim a lot. I think a lot of it is you're looking for the people that are high performing, but then you're also looking for the people that are going to hold you accountable. Like I said, they're going to share their failures with you. They're not going to really come into the conversation of what they can get out of it. They truly want to help somebody. Those are the individuals you're looking for to partner up with, to tag with, and to become partners with. Because, like I said, as Cameron Harold said, at the end of the day, we're all walking each other home. So how do you find the people that really want to support that and want to see you succeed? Other individuals are just doing it because, there's people that want to hold you back. Because the less motivated you are, the better off they're going to be. Their life gets easier. So a lot of it, I think a lot of times when you walk around the conferences, the shows and all that, and say in dentistry, you can tell in the first couple minutes if it's someone you probably want to become a mentor or mentee or hang around. It comes off pretty fast of who's genuine, who's authentic, who's in it for the right reasons. But they're all out there. You're going to have to, unfortunately, meet some lemons before you can make that lemonade. It's just kind of human nature and kind of how things work.
That's awesome, Mr. Steve. Well, Mr. Steve, we don't want to hold you up anymore. I know you're in Chicago. It's probably cold and freezing. Why don't you go have your hot chocolate and relax? But Mr. Steve, I really, truly thank you so much for coming on, talking with us. I know I'm always bothering you in your messages on LinkedIn, but that's just my personality. I'm like,
I love it.
I'm like, I just put myself out there, and if they ignore me, it's okay.
But that's half of it. Half is just putting yourself out there. A lot of people are too afraid to do that. They're too afraid to get vulnerable. They're too afraid to ask for help. But like I said, nobody knows everything. You need people along the journey.
Yes, sir.
You always got to remember the dash between the numbers.
Yes, truly. That's man. You close everything with the perfect message. That's a big. I'm just gonna close that down, Mr. Steve. Thank you so much. And I'm sure we'll meet somewhere along the journey. I'm sure I'll be one of the.
So. Yeah, I'll meet you guys live at some point.
Yes, we will.
Thank you so much,
Mr.
Steve.
Thank you very much, Mr. Steve.
Yes,
appreciate it.
Thank you.